And if you're new to Fight Night Picks, welcome. Hey, first of all, at Craig Allen FNP. You can find me there on Twitter and Instagram, Matt Allen. You can find him likewise at Matt Allen FNP on the socials. And listen, if this is your first time, A, we appreciate you, but B, we've been doing this thing for just about 3 years now. So Fight Night Picks in its third session. And there's a guy that one of us has been incredibly high on since, well, forever. And that's Rani Yahya. And Matt, I'm that guy. I've been high on Rani Yahya for just the oddest reason. To me, he's like a pocket-sized Demian Maia. You can just fit him in your pocket. It's 1A, 1B. Only Rani has this weird Muay Thai background. And if you ever watch him fight, especially in his last fight out, looked absolutely amazing on the feet against Enrique Barzola in a fight that, listen, did he lose the fight? Yeah, I mean, he didn't win the fight, but if you look at Rani in the way that he fights, I mean, he comes out like a phoenix rising with his head totally on the center line, but he does strike, and he will kind of come forward. He'll throw flying knees, he'll throw a few kicks here and there, and he'll start to land in combination with his hands. But if you look at this guy, one of the slickest jiu-jitsu practitioners in this entire world. I mean, a former longtime WEC vet, fought on the very last WEC card, WEC 48 back in 2010, made his UFC debut against ATT coach, and I cannot stress this enough, Mike Brown, beat him by decision. And you go through Rani Yahya's record, I mean, we're talking big names. He finished Josh Grisby, you know, the guy that was supposed to fight Jose Aldo for the title. Well, he finished Josh Grisby by north-south choke. Like, he has so many submission wins. He's truly like a small Maia, a small Alexei Oleinik, only he has better hands than Alexei Oleinik. You might not have heard of him because maybe you're not perusing the prelims, but you stumbled upon a channel that is very pro Rani Yahya. I have to get the bias out of the way now because this is a guy, again, like I said, we've been following him for a long time. Lately, since 2014, he's got submission wins over Johnny Bedford, Matthew Lopez, Henry Briones, Russell Doan, Luke Sanders, that one by heel hook, the loss to Ricky Simone, the draw against Enrique Barzola. Matt, in my notes, I wrote this one down because there's so many different things. 20 of Rani Yahya's wins are by submission by 12 different ways. How insane is that?
It's really, really impressive. And you talk about guys like Demian Maia, like Alexei Oleinik. They're great grapplers, but a lot of the time they know what submission they're looking for once they get the fight to the ground. Maia's always trying to get your back. Alexei Oleinik always going for those weird head and arm chokes, be it whether you're on top of him or he's on top of you. But for Rani, he can really get any submission from any different spot in the fight. And the thing I really like about Rani, and you compare him to Maia, they both do half guard sweeps very, very well. And honestly, here's the problem with Rani. His cardio falls off a cliff in that third round.
It is some of the worst cardio you've ever seen in a third round.
It really is. And some of that can be attributed to how aggressive he is in the first two rounds. And maybe if he took his foot off the gas a little bit, he might have a little bit more in the tank for the third round. But you always have to talk about that when you're talking about a Rani Yahya fight because he will, like you said, comes out of the gate, guns blazing, likes to strike, maybe a little bit too much, but his bread and butter is on the ground. And even though he's not the best wrestler in the world, he's a very tricky grappler where, let's say you do stuff his initial takedown attempt, he will go into a deep half guard. He will try to sweep to your back. He's never going to stop grappling as long as he is in that close range. So you've always got to worry just about kind of your distance from the cage being your back to the cage and away from Rani when you're fighting him. Because if he is able to get you up against the cage, he's going to just continue to trip you, tire you out. And if he is able to get your back or find an arm, he is an absolute nightmare to deal with. But for Ray Rodriguez, it will be really interesting because Ray Rodriguez, obviously I would say the more powerful striker out of these two. And it's nothing against the striking of Rani. I think he has very good striking for what we consider a jiu-jitsu ace. But the fact that he's a little too happy with his hands, and he does carry that chin very high up in the air. He's not like Luke Rockhold where, oh, you tap him, he goes stiff. But it's something you have to watch out for. And really, the Ricky Simone fight did expose some of those holes in the striking and the gas tank of Rani. Because if you could just defend a lot of his takedowns, keep the fight at range, although he is a good striker, he is somewhat simplistic in his approach. And if you're a guy like Ricky Simone, who we get on him because maybe his striking's not as good as we would like it to be at this stage of his career.
Pretty good in his last fight.
Exactly. But he was able to go out there, defend the takedowns, and just do enough to get the win. I'm not saying Ray Rodriguez can recreate that game plan, but it is very realistic for Ray Rodriguez to go out there, defend a few takedowns, force this into a striking matchup. And if he can expose some of these striking deficiencies of Rani Yahya and the fact that he does carry his chin so high, Ray Rodriguez has a chance to win this fight.
And really for Ray Rodriguez, haven't given him enough shine. So let's go by way of Texas here with the judge, Ray Rodriguez, a guy that made his UFC debut on short notice, taking on Brian Kelleher. losing in the first minute by submission in classic, well, really, Brian Kelleher fashion. If you go back and look at that one, it was by guillotine. He loves that choke. And for Ray Rodriguez, I mean, didn't really get a fair shake out of him. And this is a guy that people have known on the regional scene, especially in the LFAs and some of the smaller promotions in the States, for a very long time. He's faced a very high level of competition. If you look at it, out of his last number of fights, he beat Andy Perez over with Combate, lost to Tony Gravely on Contender Series. Well, that's going to happen. I mean, Draco Rodriguez lost to Tony Gravely with King of the Cage. You look at some of the wins. The really nice one, if you go back and watch Extreme Fight Night 356, he fought Jimmy Flick. Now, Jimmy Flick, you know and love him at 125. He's got, what, flying arm triangles? Like, the man's a wild man. But if you go back and watch that, it's an initial blitz in the second round where Rodriguez just pushes forward, jumps, has a jump knee, kind of follows it up against the cage. Flick kind of falls down, holds his eye, and that's it. Rodriguez picks up a big, big win. But again, the loss is Kelleher by, submission. You lose to a really tough out against Tony Gravely by ground and pound. The guy's an awesome wrestler for some of the lower weight classes. He got submitted by Chris Gutierrez back in 2018. Gutierrez, you know him for the leg kicks, but his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu is quite good unless you're Cody Durden at the start of a fight. But other than that, I mean, he's taken on a decent level of competition of guys that, again, you'd recognize on that lower regional scene. I mean, Steven Ocho Peterson, another one of those guys. So for Ray Rodriguez, the thing about him, a lot of wins by submission as well. And that's kind of the thing. I mean, you look at Rani Yahya, 11-4-1 in the UFC since he joined in 2011. And he's 10-6-1 at 135 pounds. This fight at 135, Ray Rodriguez's debut was up at featherweight. He's moving down to bantamweight. And again, with Rani Yahya, you look at the fight against Enrique Barzola. For me, Barzola is that perfect litmus test, whatever division he's going to end up fighting at, because he's a good wrestler, he's a pretty good striker, and he's fought a good level of competition, and there's no quitting Enrique Barzola. You watch that fight, Yahya wins the first round, Yahya wins the second round, Barzola 10-8s him in the third.
Oh my goodness.
And that's the thing. I mean, I do worry about Rani Yahya and his cardio in a fight like this. Now, Ray Rodriguez, he's been finished in the past, he's been finished by submission, and you look at Yahya, he's that kind of grappler to the nth degree. He's that great black belt that you know and you love. But for me, I do worry. I mean, I do worry about, Yahya in a fight like this. And we talked about it. I mean, you talk about third round fights that Rani Yahya has lost or has really let him slip away from. I mean, geez, even the Joe Soto fight, like he had a bad third round, and that one was back in 2017. So I have a lot of question marks about Rani Yahya. Now, of course, he trains at an American Top Team with some of the best in the world. But I look at the odds in this one. Yahya open to minus 310. He's now minus 303. For Ray Rodriguez, open plus 260. He's now plus 239. If Rodriguez is able to have a fast start and work it with the hands and really kind of tire out Rani Yahya, he could be able to get a win. Rani's jiu-jitsu is at such a next level, he could play spoiler. I just don't love that line in this one.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the odds whatsoever, and it really does come down to the cardio of Rani, because let's say Ray Rodriguez is able to make Rani work hard in that first round, steals the first round. Well, Rani's obviously not going to win that third round, especially if he already had to work hard in the first. So just by playing MMA math, I guess not by comparing opponents, but just looking at the rounds, there's definitely a path to victory for Ray Rodriguez, but I do like the grappling of Yahya. I do like the fact that even if he does get that initial takedown attempt stuffed, he is going to continue to grapple and just never settle for a bad position. And if he is able to get on top for really any period of time, the fact that he can threaten with leg locks, with arm bars, he can threaten on his back, he's just so good on the ground that it is really hard to pick against Rani in this fight.
Even in bad positions where you see his opponent on top of him, I mean, I know in his last fight against Barzola, he almost went for a Sulev stretch in that fight.
Exactly.
Got kind of bucked out of it. And if you look at Ray Rodriguez overall, he's got a good record. I mean, look at it, 16-7 in total. You look at it at bantamweight, 6-4. So does he deplete himself to get there? We'll find out on Saturday night. But both of us going with Brazil's Rani Yahya to get the win. Really looking forward to this card, Matt. We have Misha Cirkunov taking on Ryan Spann in an all-action co-main event. And finally, Leon Edwards is fighting. He's taking on Belal Muhammad in the main event. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.